In a relationship, married or not, this is worth the read. Someone shared this note and requested to pass it on. It touched so deeply. Let's share this emotional story of a married couple. But before we start, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to our channel to get some interesting stuff. When I got home that night, as my wife served dinner, I held her hand and said, "I've got something to tell you." She sat down and ate quietly. Again, I observed the hurt in her eyes. Suddenly, I didn't know how to open my mouth, but I had to let her know what I was thinking. I want a divorce. I raised the topic calmly. She didn't seem to be annoyed by my words. Instead, she asked me softly, "Why?" I avoided her question. This made her angry. She threw away the chopsticks and shouted at me, "You are not a man." That night, we didn't talk to each other. She was weeping. I knew she wanted to find out what had happened to our marriage, but I could hardly give her a satisfactory answer. She'd lost my heart to Jane. I didn't love her anymore. I just pitied her. With a deep sense of guilt, I drafted a divorce agreement which stated that she could own our house, our car, and 30% stake of my company. She glanced at it and then tore it into pieces. The woman who'd spent 10 years of her life with me had become a stranger. I felt sorry for her wasted time, resources, and energy, but I couldn't take back what I had said, for I loved Jane so dearly. Finally, she cried loudly in front of me, which was what I had expected to see. To me, her cry was actually a kind of release. The idea of divorce, which had obsessed me for several weeks, seemed to be firmer and clearer now. The next day, I came back home very late and found her writing something at the table. I didn't have supper but went straight to sleep, and fell asleep very fast because I was tired after an eventful day with Jane. When I woke up, she was still there at the table writing. I just didn't care, so I turned over and was asleep again. In the morning, she presented her divorce conditions. She didn't want anything from me, but needed a month's notice before the divorce. She requested that in that 1 month, we both struggle to live as normal a life as possible. Her reasons were simple. Our son had his exams in a month's time, and she didn't want to disrupt him with our broken marriage. This was agreeable to me. But she had something more. She asked me to recall how I had carried her into our bridal room on our wedding day. She requested that every day for the month's duration, I carry her out of our bedroom to the front door every morning. I thought she was going crazy, just to make our last days together bearable. I accepted her odd request. I told Jane about my wife's divorce conditions. She laughed loudly and thought it was absurd. No matter what trick she applies, she has to face the divorce, she said scornfully. My wife and I hadn't had any contact since my divorce intention was explicitly expressed, so when I carried her out on my first day, we both appeared clumsy. Our son clapped behind us. "Daddy's holding Mommy in his arms." His words brought me a sense of pain. From the bedroom to the sitting room, then to the door, I walked over 10 meters with her in my arms. She closed her eyes and said softly, "Don't tell our son about the divorce." I nodded, feeling somewhat upset. I put her down outside the door. She went to wait for the bus to work, and I drove alone to the office. On the second day, both of us acted much more easily. She leaned on my chest. I could smell the fragrance of her blouse. I realized that I hadn't looked at this woman carefully for a long time. I realized she wasn't young anymore. There were fine wrinkles on her face. Her hair was graying. Our marriage had taken its toll on her. For a minute, I wondered what I had done to her. On the fourth day when I lifted her up, I felt a sense of intimacy returning. This was the woman who had given 10 years of her life to me. On the fifth and sixth day, I realized that our sense of intimacy was growing again. I didn't tell Jane about this. It became easier to carry her as the months slipped by. Perhaps the everyday workout made me stronger. She was choosing what to wear one morning. She tried on quite a few dresses, but couldn't find a suitable one. Then she sighed. "All my dresses have grown bigger." Suddenly realized that she had grown so thin, that was the reason why I could carry her more easily. Suddenly it hit me. She had buried so much pain and bitterness in her heart. Subconsciously, I reached out and touched her head. Our son came in at that moment and said, "Dad, it's time to carry Mom out." To him, seeing his father carrying his mother out had become an essential part of his life. My wife gestured to our son to come closer and hugged him tightly. I turned my face away because I was afraid I might change my mind at this last minute. I then held her in my arms, walked from the bedroom through the sitting room to our hallway. Her hand surrounded my neck softly and naturally. I held her body tightly. It was just like our wedding day. But her much lighter weight made me sad. On the last day when I held her in my arms, I could hardly move a step. Our son had gone to school. I held her tightly and I said, I hadn't noticed that our life lacked intimacy. I drove to the office, jumped out of the car swiftly without locking the door. I was afraid any delay would make me change my mind. I walked upstairs. Jane opened the door, and I said to her, Sorry, Jane, I don't want the divorce anymore. She looked at me, astonished, and then touched my forehead. Do you have a fever? She said. I moved her hand off my head. Sorry, Jane, I said I won't divorce. My marriage life was boring, probably because she and I didn't value the details of our lives, not because we didn't love each other anymore. Now I realize that since I carried her into my home on our wedding day, I'm supposed to hold her until death do us part. Jane seemed to suddenly wake up. She gave me a loud slap and then slammed the door and burst into tears. I walked downstairs and drove away. At the floral shop on the way, I ordered a bouquet of flowers for my wife. The salesgirl asked me what to write on the card. I smiled and wrote, I'll carry you out every morning until death do us part. That evening, I arrived home, flowers in my hands, a smile on my face. I run upstairs, only to find my wife in the bed, dead. My wife had been fighting cancer for months, and I was so busy with Jane to even notice. She knew that she would die soon, and she wanted to save me from whatever negative reaction from our son in case we push through with the divorce. At least in the eyes of our son, I'm a loving husband. The small details of your lives are what really matter in a relationship. It's not the mansion, the car, property, the money in the bank. These create an environment conducive for happiness, but cannot give happiness in themselves. So find time to be your spouse's friend and do those little things for each other that build intimacy. Do have a happy marriage. If you don't share this, nothing will happen to you. If you do, you might just save a marriage. Many of life's failures are people who do not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Let's share another heart-touching story of an old married couple with a valuable lesson. 70-year-old woman wants a divorce and learns a lesson too late. An old couple around the age of 70 walks into a lawyer's office and decides to file a divorce. Lawyer was first shocked, but after having a chat with them, he revealed their story. This old couple had been quarreling all their 40 years over marriage. Nothing ever seemed to be good. They hang on because of their children, afraid that it might affect their upbringing. Now, all their children have already grown up, have their own family. There's nothing else the old couple have to worry about. All they wanted is to lead their own life free from all these years of unhappiness from their marriage. So both agree on a divorce. The lawyer's having a hard time trying to get the papers done because he felt that after 40 years of marriage, at the age of 70, he couldn't understand why the old couple would want a divorce. While they were signing the papers, the wife told the husband, I really love you, but I can't carry on anymore. I'm sorry. It's okay. I understand, said the husband. Looking at this, the lawyer suggested a dinner together, just the three of them. The wife thought, why not, since they're still going to be friends. At the dining table, there was a silence of awkwardness. The first dish was roasted chicken. Immediately, the old man took the drumstick for the lady. Take this, it's your favorite. Looking at this, the lawyer thought, maybe there's still a chance. But the wife was frowning when she answers. This is always the problem. You always think so highly of yourself. You never thought about how I feel. Don't you know I hate drumsticks? Little did she know that over the years, the husband has been trying all ways to please her. Little did she know that drumsticks were the husband's favorite. Little did she know that she never thought he understands her at all. Little did he know that she hates drumsticks, even though all he wants is the best for her. That night, both of them couldn't sleep. They toss and turn, toss and turn. After hours, the old man couldn't take it anymore. He knows that he still loves her and he can't carry on life without her. He wants her back. He wants to tell her he's sorry. He wanted to tell her, "I love you." He picks up the phone, started dialing her number. The ringing never stops. He never stops dialing. On the other side, she was sad. She couldn't understand how come after all these years he still doesn't understand her at all. She loves him a lot, but she just can't take it anymore. Phone's ringing, she refuses to answer, knowing that it's him. What's the point of talking now that it's over? I've asked for it, and now I want to keep it this way. If not, I'll lose face, she thought. Still ringing, she's decided to pull out the cord. Little did she remember he has heart problems. The next day, she received news that he had passed away. She rushed down to his apartment, saw his body lying on the couch, still holding onto the phone. He had a heart attack while he was still trying to get through to her on the phone line. As sad as she could be, she'll have to clear his belongings. When she was looking through the doors, she saw this insurance policy dated the day they got married, with the beneficiary being her, and together in those files there was a note. To my dearest wife, by the time you're reading this, I'm sure I'm no longer around. I bought this policy for you, though the amount is only $100,000. I hope it will be able to help me continue my promise that I've made when we got married. I might not be around anymore. I want this amount of money to continue taking care of you, just like the way I will if I could have lived longer. I want you to know I'll always be around for you. By your side, I love you. Tears flowed like a river. When you love someone, let them know. You never know what'll happen the next minute. Learn to build a life together. Learn to love each other for who they are, not what they are. Sometimes we take too much about ourselves that we neglect to see what the other person is trying to tell us. Love is never selfish and never should be. Sometimes we have to look deeper into ourselves and say, what does he or she want to tell me that I can't seem to comprehend? Instead of saying, why can't he or she understand me? Can't he or she see that I'm struggling? Only then we'll be able to understand that love will always be a two-way street and a mirage of what we truly and deeply want. That's all for today's stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends and loved ones.